Alright, well it's been a few weeks, and if you tuned into my last video, you may notice that the Card-a-tron looks a little different. I'm going to try to run through those changes here in the next few minutes and then give you a little more information on how to pull it down and maybe start using it for yourself. The first change I'm going to go over is the exclude duplicates check mark here, and this was back-end functionality in the configuration file, but there are reasons to go ahead and expose it, and we'll get to those reasons later. But so right now, if I bring up loot, I get my loot cards, and I have these duplicates in each group, and if I hit exclude duplicates and I rerun the search, those go away. Alright, right next to the exclude duplicates there is the sort option. So there's a drop down here that has several sorts defined. So I happen to like size and name, so if I select size and name and I hit sort, you'll see that it sorts it hopefully by size and name. So we got A for alien, and actually they're all the same size, so it's A to W, so that looks good. Alright, better example of size and name might be, say, hero. If I type in hero, anything that has an association with hero will be here. So this is hero gambler, this is ace in the hole, and then if we go down to where a card size or orientation changes, so right here went all the way to W, and then it reset because the size of the card or orientation of the card changed. It does those in alphabetical order. So animal forms through spirit magic spells, and then it starts on the next set. So that's how that works. Alright, so let's see what's next. Get to the top. Oh, okay, so right here, this is a random draw functionality. Okay, random draw, so I think loot would work well for random draws, right? So I do loot, and I realize I have wastelands in here, so let's get rid of wasteland. And then I have encounters in here, so let me go ahead and get rid of encounters. So there are my loots, but I probably want the duplicates, so there we go. There are all my loot cards. So now that I have my loot cards up, I can come up here to this little button here which says random draw. If I hit it, boom, I get a random draw, and every time I hit it I get a different random draw. But maybe you got 3 loot cards, so if you come up here and you change the number next to it, which is called number of cards, and you hit it, you get 3 cards, or as many cards as you want. So the button right next to the number of cards for random is the redraw button. When the track button is not checked, the redraw button essentially does the same thing as the random button. However, once you use track, and what track does is when you select track, when you do a random, we put the numbers of the cards that were selected, or the IDs of the cards that are selected, over in this text box, which is called cards drawn, and every time you hit it, we keep adding those cards until eventually you have nothing left, in which case you come over here and you hit reset. And then so if I come here and I hit 1 and I hit 2 and then I say, oh, wine, I want to redraw. If you click redraw, it'll basically replace those last 3 drawn. Maybe useful if you have a player who's had a bad night and you want to give them an extra chance or something. I don't know. So I think I inadvertently showed you the clear functionality. So this track is just the number or IDs of the cards, and when you run out you can hit this X button over here, which is clear cards drawn, and it will empty the selection. And these last 2 buttons over here, I actually need to have some cards in the track, so let me hit this again. So there I have some cards in the track. So this is basically to show the cards that you've drawn. So the card numbers that are in here, if you hit this button, these are the cards that I've drawn. They're sorted, I think they're sorted by your sort. So it doesn't keep the order, but if that's important, I'll add a functionality to fix that. And then this button here shows you the remaining cards. So I found it interesting to look at. I don't know if it's actually that useful. That actually can be used to look up cards by their ID. IDs change on everyone's system, and every time you rescan the cards, the ID will change. Haven't really dealt with that yet. Haven't had a reason to, but it might be something in the future where I make an effort to make it so that once you initialize your cards, when you run the scan again, it tries to keep things in the same ID. Could be useful for tracking cards. So maybe the person said, oh, it was card 703. So if you type 703 in here, and then you come over here and you click the show cards drawn. That'll actually bring up that card, so could be useful kind of as a lookup card functionality. Not really its intended use, but still could be useful. All right, that's a lot of it. Oh, what's left? Oh, history. So I used the previous version. I didn't keep track of history, so you can never get back to results, but now I'm filling the browser with the complete history. So using the back and forward button, you can actually go back and forth if you have questions on something that happened, maybe you drew, or what map cards you drew, or whatever. But there's other ways to deal with that, and I'll be getting to those. So something else that I implemented just maybe sort of help things out while you're playing is the ability to change what's up here in the title bar. So if you double click up in this top area, it will bring up a little pop-up box, not very fancy, but you can actually change this title. Maybe I say it's the loot text. So now that says Card-a-tron loot, and then boom, it's visible. And then if you go and duplicate the tab, right? Wait, can't do it. Oh, here, duplicate. You can then maybe come over to this one and change it to enemy, right? And it doesn't change anything. Wait, enemy, right? Enemy, brutal or normal. Boom. So there's my enemies. So now you have two tabs, one for loot, one for enemies, that you can leave up and refer back to as you play the game. And that's pretty cool, but the other thing I've added is the ability to bookmark the pages. So once you get a number of these tabs set up, you can go in and bookmark them. So that allows you to bring them up the next time you play, which I think adds a lot of value. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and enable my bookmarks bar. Bookmarks bar. Then let me go ahead and add a bookmark over here for this page on the bookmarks bar. Done for that one. And then come over here. Done for that one. So with that, I should be able to close these out, right? Let me bring up a blank tab and close both these out. And then if I click here, it brings up the search criteria. It'll bring up exclude duplicates, the sort, the number here. What it will not bring up is the cards tracked. That wasn't the intent. If that's a requirement, someone let me know and I may do it. So anyway, so then you come up here, you hit the search, and boom, you get the list that you had before. And then if I come up to here and I right click and I say open a new tab, I get the criteria for loot. I hit this and it brings up the loot. So anyway, so that's how you can bookmark. So I'm sure you noticed that it did not execute the search when it brought up the bookmark. So there is a way to do that. So if we come up here and we add at, I think it's execute equals true to this and hit return, it'll run and do an execute. So we can do the same thing to the bookmark, right? If I come up here and I say edit the bookmark, and I come in here and I say and execute equals true and hit save, then now when I bring up that bookmark, it runs it. So don't know how useful it is, but it's an option if you want it. So you may be saying that looks great, and how do I get it? So just a few minutes ago I made it a public repository on GitHub. So I am going to bring up an incognito window so I don't get logged in and show you how to get it. So let's navigate over to my GitHub repository. So it's github.com/grumpygk, and then the repository is called Card-a-tron. If you hit enter, it brings it up. If you're familiar with GitHub, that's great. You can log in and clone the master repository. There's only the master at the moment. Don't know when that'll change, so just keep an eye out. If you're not familiar with GitHub, that's okay too. So you can come over here and you can say download zip, which is what I'm going to do right now. And there we go, 6.6 megabytes. Oh, I almost neglected the most important part of what's on GitHub. Besides the code itself, there's the README file. This README file is about 13K, and it is the documentation. So I explain everything I could possibly think of to explain in this file. So refer to this file if you have questions, or you can send me questions on Facebook, I guess, or maybe I'll provide another way. But yeah, that README is very important and very detailed, so take a little time to read over it. So now I'm going to go ahead and show that in the folder. Let me bring that over here. So I got all kinds of junk here, but here's Card-a-tron master. If I open it up, Card-a-tron master again, and then examples. So I'm going to back up one, and I'm going to copy this directory. Alright, so then I'm going to go over to C, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it demo, and then I'll go in there, and I will paste the Card-a-tron folder, which is half off my screen. Alright, but there we go, there's the Card-a-tron master folder. So just for, I don't know, my own well-being, I'm going to rename it to Card-a-tron, and then go in here. So once you're in here, you can look at the directory structure. So as it ships, this public directory is where the website is hosted from, and there is a data directory which has a meta file in it, which is sort of a default meta file, but there's no images. So to demo it, I'm going to come back up here to Card-a-tron, and I'm going to go to examples, and then there's playing cards. So I'm going to copy the playing card. Actually, I'm going to go into the directory, and I will go ahead and copy the images out of that directory, and then come back down over to the demo folder. And then inside this public directory, I will paste the images. So in theory, to get started, copying images is almost the only thing you have to do. The only other thing you should have to do is index the cards and then start the web server. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I am going to bring up a command window, and then we need to navigate over to the Card-a-tron folder. Okay. So if we do a directory listing, directory listing of the files. So in order to index the cards, you'll see that there's a cardindex.class file out here. This is a compiled Java executable. So if you look at the README, you'll see there's a command, Java cardindex public, and then there's a redirect to public data cards JSON. So if I run this, it'll actually index the cards that I just copied in, the images. Let me run that again without redirecting, and you can see basically, so it creates some data that we're redirecting into that file, and that becomes the basis for the search. And I'll show you more about that later. So once the cards are indexed, we're almost there. So normally, I think when I did this before, I said you had to have a web server. I have since created a embedded Jetty file server Java class so that you don't have to go find web software or web server software and install it. So also from the README file, you can find this command, which is Java, and it's class path, so there's a library that I rely on, so it's also stored in the same directory, so you have to specify class path and then the name of the class or to run, or Java program to run, which is the embedded Jetty file server. So if I bring that up, you can see that it starts and it says it is running on port 8080. So the only thing left to do should be to bring up a web browser and go to localhost 8080, and I'm going to clear my cache. So by default, the metadata that defines how the system behaves only has a single sort, and the sort dropdown is turned off, so that's why it looks a little different. The default cards that I loaded are the playing cards, so you're basically your 52 card deck. So if I come up here to search and I do, let's look for aces, right? There are the aces, kings, there are all your kings, or I can leave it blank and just do card, since the directory structure contains the word card. If I do card, all the cards will show up. right? And then I could theoretically do random card, right? So there you go, random card picker, or I could hit track and it'll do them all down, or I can say give me 10 cards at a time, right? And it'll do that. So yeah, that's it. It's working. Really easy to set up. The customization is a bit involved, but just if you just drag your images into the directory and run the index file and start the server, you have a working system. So that's pretty much it. You know how to get started. So look at the README for any questions. If you have additional questions, go ahead and leave comments, and I guess I'll answer them here on YouTube. Or you can email me at card-a-tron@grumpygeek.net, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. If this gets bigger, I'll have to find another way to answer questions. But that'll happen if necessary. So that's it. If you want to stick around, the rest of this video is going to be talking about the changes that have happened since the last video. So there are a few things that have changed since the last video. One of them has to do with the search criteria. So if I execute this search, you can see that there are face cards included. So maybe I didn't want the kings or something. I don't know. I could come up here, and if I do minus king, I only do minus queen, then we can bring this up again, and there are no king and queen, or actually better yet would write no jokers, right? No joker. So there you go. So that exclude functionality has been added. A fairly minor change that I've done is, if you recall from the last video, I mentioned named parameters, and before you could use the equal sign to match to a named parameter. I have changed that equal sign to a colon, and it just looks better in some searches. It's kind of less confusing when there's other criteria involved. So named parameters now use a colon. So if I say name4, brings up all the 4s. So another thing that was added was keyword files. So I guess as an example of that, let me run a query for jack, and that brings up all the jacks. And if you hover over, you can see the keywords include spades, jack, and the J. J is actually the file name, so jack actually does not appear anywhere in the path. So in order to be able to search by the word jack, there has to be another mechanism, and that mechanism is the keyword file. So the keywords file is a way to associate additional words with a particular image. So you can see it's a simple JSON array. And these are your JSON objects. So we just load these up at start time for each directory. So you can see like each image for the numbered cards is the number and dot ping. So in order to be a search by 2, 3, 4, I had to add the word 2, 3, 4. So if we scroll down to the bottom, same thing goes with king, queen, jack. So in order to be able to maybe I wanted to search by face card, because these are your face cards, right? I could go in here and add the word face to each one of those. Do that real fast. I guess fast is relative. Nope. Save that. Now if I come back in here and I bring up the browser and I refresh or restart, I can still do jack, but now if I type in face, I get nothing. Haha, bad example. Actually, not a bad example. Sometimes you need to refresh multiple times to get these things to work. So let me try it now. Oh, there we go. So one thing you'll notice that I only got the black club cards, and that's because there's a keywords file in each image directory, and I happen to separate those into separate directories. So I can go in and copy those files, or that file, into each of those directories, and then I will be able to search face and get all of those cards. So rather than have you watch me do that, I went ahead and did that. So again, I'm going to refresh the page and then hit face and see what we get. There we go. So now that I've copied that file, the keywords into all those directories, we get all the face cards. Not something you would normally have to do because you're not going to have the same cards necessarily in this, different directories. So probably not a big issue there. So a word of caution on keywords.json files. So I went into the public image directory and made changes to those files. And actually, in my case, that's the only place where I have those files. So if I delete that public images directory, say I'm copying the files in from another place because I generate those files from larger files, I will lose my keywords.json. So I've done that once on my Shadows of Brimstone project and had to recover it. So luckily I don't have too much done yet with keywords.json. But yeah, so this is one of those cases where treating this more like a traditional web project and doing a build process that deploys into the public images directory would probably mitigate that. So it's something to think about and something that might happen in the future. So that's it. You finally made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching.